pen and paper on this player haters, old news, money on the other line. So
all right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is I'm Not Gonna Hold You, the off-season man as usual. I'm your host, Scott. You know to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Barberchair Scott. You know to follow HNB Media at HNB Media TV on Twitter and at HNB Media on Instagram. And of course, you know to follow the Barberchair Network at Barberchair Net on Twitter. Subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Barberchair Network, man. But it's the off-season. Basketball's over. Baseball's in full swing, getting ready for the NFL in about a month. So we got a special guest here, man. We've got the one and only Clinton Yates from ESPN, everyday panelist on Around the Horn with ESPN LA, formerly of the Washington Post. Great follow on Twitter, man. It is definitely one of the guys who I look up to in this media game, especially for black men like myself, man. Thank you for joining me today. How you doing?
Appreciate you, Scott. I'm glad to be here. Like I said, I'm a fan of your work, so let's chop it up, man. I'm ready to do it.
Oh, definitely, man. Thank you. I appreciate that, man. First of all, man, let's talk about. I see you got the ESPN LA in the background, man. You just moved out here, as I like to call it, the best coast. I'm from Chicago, from the South Side. You know, I moved out here in 2014. So I've been out here for a minute, man. But how you like it? How long you been out here in LA?
I love it, man. I've been out here for about 2 years. I moved literally right before the big shutdown, but I've been coming out here. If you add up all the time, I've probably been coming out here about 5 years. If you remember that ESPY Awards where Dwayne Wade, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, and LeBron James all took the stage for that cold open, that was the first time I came out here to really work on something. And I thought to myself, why don't I live here? Like, just straight up, you know what I'm saying? I was like, the radio studio is right here. Staples Center, which was named at the time, is right there. The TV studio is right there. And I loved California. And that's when the wheels started turning that maybe I can just do the things that I do, but just do them all here, you know? And it wasn't easy in the context of I had to make sure I established relationships out here, you know what I mean? And that's why, I work at the radio station now. I'm getting ready to do a show and, made friends and did my best to give it an honest effort. And when I said I was going to move, they were like, oh, all right. I mean, I didn't ask. I just said, I'm from DC. I'm from the East Coast. And, a lot of the stuff that happened during the pandemic, it was me looking at my hometown. And I remember thinking, like, thank God I made it out here because I would have never left. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wouldn't have happened just because of the way sort of time, transpired. So, made it out here and, been having a great time. California's great. And it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had the same thing. Like I graduated from Columbia College, Chicago in like 2012. So I was just like, it was like a year of trying to get myself together, what I was gonna do next. And I remember my friend moved out here, and he was like, "You gotta come out to LA." I came out to LA first time. Not gonna lie, I didn't like it like that. I don't know if you feel like these street lights. They're pretty dim. They're pretty dim. With somebody from Chicago, I don't really mess with that. I'll be looking around all the time, and it kind of like threw me off. But I came back like a month later, had a blast, man. And I'm just, I've been out here for a long time, and I have no plans of going back. People have stopped asking me when I'm moving back, so I think.
Oh yeah, no, that's not happening, man. I got my homie Julian lives out here. Shout outs to him. IG and Twitter at Soft Shoe Raps. My cousin lived out here as well. Like I got just enough friends. I ain't got no whole, I ain't with different crews, as they say.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I got my friends, and that made it easier for the transition. I wasn't out here looking for anything other than, what I wanted. So
I always say about that, you always got to have like a crew. When I moved out here, it was only one person I knew, but it's like now I damn near know more people than I know back home. So this is kind of great, man. So,
I know that feeling.
But yeah, man. But you say you got your start in DC, man. So tell me, like, how was like, the role from, being in DC, and I know you were at, the Washington Post for 9 years.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, basically, like, what was your first memories of sports, and what made you want to get into the space to begin with?
So I played soccer, basketball, and baseball in high school. I was a pretty serious athlete, but playing at the college level wasn't going to work just because the way my family setup happened. I wasn't going to be in a position to actually try to pursue getting into college to play sports because if you know anything about that game, baseball was my main sport, so if you know anything about that game, it's just, it requires a family commitment that if you're not uber talented, you know what I'm saying? Like you're going to need. And so sports was always a part of my life. It was part of how I made friends. It was, basically like, it was the community that I knew for the most part in terms of what my social activities were just plainly, growing up. And so when I went to college, I went to NYU my first year and I didn't like it. I was a business student. I ended up coming home and living for a year, and I went back to college, and I had randomly got into a big car crash that I almost died in. And I remember thinking, like, damn, what the hell am I doing with my life? And when I was getting ready to go back to school, I went to Miami, Ohio, ultimately. My dad was like, bro, all you do is listen to the radio and read the newspaper all day and watch sports. Like, why don't you give it a shot? And I was like, oh, that's not a bad idea. You know what I mean? So from there, I started doing more media stuff in college. I wrote, I did radio, I did whatever TV stuff we could do. After that, I worked in radio promotions and a little bit on air, just in Ohio after college. And then I decided I wanted to move back home. It was just not working out. I didn't really want to live in Ohio anymore. It was just kind of like, all right, well, this was cool for college, but I don't really know folks like that, and this is not really cracking, to be honest. You know what I'm saying? So
my uncle's from Ohio. Trust me, I know.
Right, you know. So I just literally applied for a job off of Craigslist at the Washington Post Express, which was the free daily that you got on the train in DC back in the day. It folded recently, RIP Express, but I applied for a job as a designer, ended up getting a job as an editor because all the stuff that I had designed in college were also things that I had written on. The guy was like, well, you can, you know, you're a pretty good writer. Why don't you try this in terms of what we're doing? I was a local news editor there, you know, which was a big advantage because I'm from DC. So I think I had a little bit of an edge in terms of like the way that I offered my coverage and, you know, covered pop culture and stuff as well. And over the years, just started being creative. You know, Twitter came out. I started doing more radio back home. Next thing you know, they asked me to write a newsletter. And I think those two things are where I really found my voice between, frankly, Twitter and the newsletter. You know, you're interfacing with more people. You're learning about what it is that people like and how you're going to find your voice and what you're going to say. They gave me a column after that where I wrote about local news and local stuff that I thought was interesting. And then one day I went to a local bar that I used to hang out in Adams Morgan in DC that a lot of sports writers used to hang out at the time. And they had something called a Wizards Watch Party, one of the Wizards fans groups from the NBA. And Dan Steinberg, the columnist for the Post, he was there with them. Like he went to it for whatever reason. And somebody had just left the sports section at the Post. And if you know anything about the sports section at the Post, it's pretty revered. Like Boswell, Kornheiser, Wilbon, those three alone are enough to
legends,
you know, show most people what's really going on. And interestingly enough, I had met Tony and Mike in previous summers because I was a real weirdo and I would just show up to places and try to get put on and it worked. And so like I yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like I met them and I knew them, and Tony Reale, bless his heart, you know, the Around the Horn host, he used to come on my college radio show, which was really kind of him to spend his time doing. And so like I had a relationship with them. That's a separate discussion that we'll get to later. But Dan was like, dude, you should write for the sports section. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not about to just walk in. You know what I mean? Like, I knew him as a friend from the newsroom, but I wasn't ready to, at least I didn't think I was. He was like, bro, trust me, you care more than most people who already even work there. And I was like, all right, bet. You know what I mean? So young journalists out there, the passion, I can't control the passion, to quote Fat Joe, but it shows sometimes. And anyway, so long story short, later I was at the Post Sports desk and I was just like, you got to be kidding me. So, you know, wrote there for a while. I was ready to go back to my column because it was really important to me. You know, writing about your hometown when you live in your hometown is really quite the mental exercise, Scott. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't realize how caught up I was in my own head about everything until I moved off the local beat and I was on sports where there's a schedule and everything just kind of starts and stops. And sure, there's a long news cycle, but when the games are done, the games are done. You know what I mean? And it calmed me down a lot. And I remember going to my man, Kevin Merida, and I was like, dude, he was the managing editor at the time. If you don't know Kevin Merida, he's now the executive editor of the Los Angeles Times, and he was also the editor-in-chief of the Undefeated. So that brother is the man. And I was like, dude, I want to get back to my column. Like, what are we doing here? He goes, dude, you're not going back to your column. And I was like, what? I had a breakdown, Scott. I was upset. I'd worked my whole life for this. You know what I mean? I thought something was really getting taken away from me. And I was like, why? And I was defiant. And he said, because you're better at this. And I was like, oh, alrighty then. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, you need to stick with this. Like, this is where your skill set is. Whether or not it's what's necessarily what you think you're going to be best at is a different matter. But I did. And then when he went to ESPN, he took me with him. And, you know, we sort of launched the Undefeated and built that thing from the ground up. I remember the all hands meetings we had before we launched and all the ideas we wanted to do and all the stuff we wanted to execute. And, from there, it just became a matter of being me. I
Yeah.
wanted to work with as many different people as possible. Radio was always in my blood. I did a daily commentary in DC for about 6 whole years after being a columnist because it was just something that I wanted to do to get
Right.
these reps up. And listen, you don't get handed those opportunities, but I made sure to
Yeah.
make it work, and it happened. So, by the time I got to ESPN, I was much more ready as an all-around journalist than I think I would have been if I had just done that straight out of college, to be honest.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because from all the experience doing so many different things, not just sports, I became a little bit more of a well-rounded person. And so now, when we talk about different things on different shows, this stuff is stuff that I've covered in some manner or another. I'm not just
Right.
talking about it, So that's one thing that I take a lot of pride in terms of my career and where we are today.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up like the Undefeated. I wanted to talk about that because that was actually like one of the things that was like inspirational for me when I decided to make the Barber's Chair Network. I used to work at Amazon Studios for about 3 years. Like I left maybe like 5 months before the pandemic started. So it's actually God looking out because I got that
Right.
paid the rest of my contract before they was able to cut me for the pandemic. And
Smart
so
move.
it's like, I would be in all these meetings with all these, studio heads, and they're talking about all this content. And, there was one conversation that was talking about what Black people would like to see. And I'm sitting here and I'm like an executive assistant. So I'm not like high on I'm there to take notes and shut the hell up. And so I'm like, I'm the only Black person here. How y'all telling me what Black people want to hear and watch? So I remember I was like super frustrated, and I was like, you know what? I like talking about sports. I like talking about entertainment. Let me do this my own way. And I linked up with my brother and my friend, my homie Pierce, and we came up with that. And the Undefeated was like one of the things I would read a lot when it first came out. And I think it was like 2016, if I'm not mistaken. You correct me if that was like
that's
the year.
right.
I remember it being around the time of the Cavs Warriors Part 2, if I remember correctly. And I would read you guys stuff all the time, and that was just something I was like, yeah, we need something like this, but I want to do like audio and video and things of that nature. What was you guys like theme of like idea when y'all came up to this? Was there like, kind of what I'm saying, if you guys want to do this, just have a Black voice at ESPN? Like, what went through the whole creative process of making that?
Not gonna lie, man, there were so many ideas that so many talented people had brought to the table that a large part of the challenge was figuring out exactly what we were going to do. Because Kevin, when he brought the squad together, Kevin has been around the business forever. That brother knows a lot of people. So by the time he picked his team, the talent level was very high. And so we had to figure out what it was we were going to push and how it was we were going to ultimately make our imprint, not just on ESPN, but on the country and the globe, and that wasn't an easy task. I mean, I took that and I still do take that very seriously from a responsibility standpoint. And I think for me, the main thing it offered, Scott, was just a newsroom where you felt comfortable. For a lot of Black folks who work in journalism, whether you're in the field, whether you're an editor, whether you're a photog, or whatever you may do, the space of the newsroom, which I get it, is an antiquated concept at this point, but it's still very real.
Exactly.
In terms of virtual community, even if not physical community. That to me was what it was all about, man. We get in there and get to snapping on each other. And I'm not talking about wasting time. I'm just talking about the creative cauldron. And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these we all need to rush back to the office people. No. I'm talking about from a mindset.
It's like kind of like the culture with kind of go
the
with
mindset we were in then, and the level of Blackness we were allowed to exude just with each other was something to me that I thought, bro, I mean, it was invaluable. You know what I'm saying? There's just no other way to put it in terms of the team building, in terms of sort of like, how it is when something's all right if everybody in the room thinks it's all right and everybody in the room is pretty cool. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
There was a lot of that. It was like, if you can impress your peers, you've done something good. And I think one of Kevin's biggest talents, which, Raina, who is now our editor-in-chief, they worked in tandem so well, was getting that out of people. Those two were really good at making sure that whatever ideas we were brought there to execute, they put us in the best position to do so. And Kevin did that before, and Raina does that now.
Yeah, and I like how you brought up how, like, being comfortable, because I think that's the big thing. I just started like covering teams like really last year. So this is like for our company, this is our third year covering the Chicago Bears as like beat reporters. Like my brother does majority of it because I'm not home all the time, but I did 5 games last year. I just did OTAs last 2 weeks ago. And
you were there?
I was there. Yeah, at Hallis Hall doing all that. And we have a great relationship with the Bears. I got to give a shout out to them. Like they're very compared to most teams, very like in tune with what's going in with the community. And they've been hitting us up about ways to like, you know, get into the Black community. And I just did the Clippers this year. And I remember like being in that space. I don't know how people look at me weird, how like everybody got these suits on. And I'm here, you know, flannel hat, you know, just chilling.
No,
it's
you
like,
dress like a normal person, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, I would get more. Let's just say I've had more security ask for my credential more than anybody else who's been around. You know, so it's kind of like building that safe space of having, you know, a different face to media. I feel.
I think also there's also the different platforms as well. The way that the sort of the blogosphere has exploded, and I hate to use an old word, but like, you know, there was a time when the line between people who covered the team and people who were fan experts was much more strongly delineated. And I think now everybody realizes like we all see the same stuff. Like the only real difference is sure the intake you get if you're there in terms of background, but like there's a lot of smart people out here. And I think the internet really democratized sort of what we consider to be knowledge, you know? And so for brothers like yourself, it's like, okay, all right, I'm interested. I'm here. I can read and write. I can see what y'all are talking about. I don't need to wear a suit or have gone to whatever, you know, journalism school. Like I don't wear suits. I didn't graduate from college. You know what I'm saying? I just went pro when it was ready to go, and I stayed myself. You know, and I only say that because my point is that it can work if you've got the talent. And that's one of the things I've appreciated about guys like you is that you haven't been afraid to get out there and talk your talk. You've been waiting for the big chance or waiting for this, that, and the third, or you know, only doing it so you could say you were the man. You're doing it out of the love, and that's something that I think has been rewarded for a lot of brothers like yourself who will put in the work. So you know, that's what's up, man. That's really the best thing I've seen develop, frankly, since the Undefeated started, because I look at people like David Dennis, Justin Tinsley. They both just dropped books last month that are bangers. One about David Dennis's dad, you know what I'm saying, who was a freedom fighter, and the other, the Notorious B.I.G. biography from Tinsley. Those dudes worked at the smoking section together back in the day.
Yeah, I remember the smoking section. Yeah.
You know, and like to think that that's what we've developed, and I rap with them on ATH now. You know what I'm saying? Like it's really cool just to see that. Never mind where I am, just as a fan of the business and you know, fan of sports.
Yeah, I like how you brought up how like, you know, the importance of your column. And to me, it's like, you know, it's always that little spark. Like, I think the thing that like got me into sports media was me and my brother, we started our podcast, 79th and Hallis, which is we're diehard Chicago Bears fans. Like to the point they can ruin my week. And obviously from the Bears, they've ruined a lot of damn weeks.
I was going to say, that's a lot of time wasted. Yeah.
A lot of damn weeks they've ruined of mine. But like my dad, like when I was like my introduction to sports, of course, is Michael Jordan. Growing up in Chicago in the 90s, it was Jordan. My godfather was security for the Bulls back in the 90s. So like the whole thing. But my dad would play old Walter Payton tapes. And like I saw Walter Payton. Now, granted, this was like actually the year that he died. And you know, shout out to Jared. I have a great relationship with his son. That's my guy, Jared Payton. And you know, that just kind of like sparked my love for it. And you know, we would just be talking about like the Bears all the time. So I was like, let's just do a podcast. And like that became the first thing in 2015. And I just started building to which just eventually led to that. So it's kind of like that little thing that kind of gets you going. So my question for you, I want to take it back to DC real quick, were you like a big DC sports fan? Was there like any of these teams that you're like a huge fan of, or was just you just kind of like just watch the sports in general?
No, I was a big DC sports fan. I mean, it was basically what I did to hang out with my friends. I mean, that's just the activities we participated in. Like, I'm not a huge NFL guy, and so I didn't waste a lot of time wasting weeks after a certain point in my life other than to make fun of that team. But, you know, the Wizards, the Caps, when the Nationals came, I was 24 years old. And I'm a big baseball guy. It was a big deal for me. So, you know, in the end of my DC career, I got to see the Mystics win the WNBA title. I got to see the Nats win the World Series, and I got to see the Capitals win the Stanley Cup, you know, and for a lifelong fan, it was about that time where, you know, if it hadn't happened when it did, I wasn't really going to care. You know what I'm saying? Like anymore, you know, just out of, you know, the years of rooting for mediocre teams or whatever. something I'm sure you understand coming,
from
a Bears fan. They cashed in. The teams that I really cared about cashed in right when I was ever going to care again. But, it was a cool experience. But for me, it was the love of the sports. I mean, I caution people who are trying to get into this business thinking that being a diehard fan is really what it's all about. No, I was a fan in the context of I liked rooting for the teams because it allowed me an opportunity for camaraderie with the people where I lived. And it was just what I knew from a social standpoint. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to understand that John Thompson, the Hoyas coach, was the first reason I ever liked sports in general. You know what I'm saying? My dad took me to games when I was a kid and was like, that's the coach. That's our team. That's who we root for. And it was like, oh, well, I got a brother who's got a bunch of other brothers, and all they do is seem to kick butt. And they're doing it on their own. This is cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what's up. So those connectivity levels filter on up where people who do this, people who do that, and somebody's in the business. Maybe somebody makes a team or whatever. And that's just what you're connected to. But, there's a diligence that comes with being a journalist that isn't just about being a fan. You've got to be able to understand what the two different things are and why they matter to each other. So that was a big part of, I think, why a lot of people respected me in DC was because I wasn't afraid to criticize the teams for fear that somebody would not talk to me anymore. Like, who cares? If somebody doesn't want to talk to me anymore, that's on them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm doing my job. And so what my fanhood overlapped with when I was a journalist was basically like, I just made a point to try to tell stories about other fans who liked it for the right reasons too. And when you're in a city like DC, that's majority Black, and the football team is problematic as all get out. And then one guy owns both the basketball team, the WNBA team, rather the NBA team, the WNBA team, and the hockey team. Like, there was some stuff that came up. You know what I mean? It was a plenty viable content source just in terms of like living in the city, never mind being a sports fan. So I kind of had a natural advantage in that regard, but it was something that I tried to take advantage of and do earnestly, never mind honestly.
Yeah. And I like how you said like how people think it's like being a diehard fan. Actually, the thing since I've been in this, I wouldn't say it's like made me less of a fan, but I have like more of I don't respect, like I kind of know like the business aspect of it or everything that goes with it. It's different when you watch these people on TV and you see them every day. It's a different thing. And it's like, since I've been doing the Clippers, I've had the pleasure of meeting Jerry West. And like, I was like, first time I ever met him, he said hi to me, sat down, ate his ice cream, talking. I'm looking around like, you talking to me? Like the logo of the league is talking to me. And it's like, you kind of get like a deeper appreciation for what these guys do. So I don't think I take my losses as hard anymore. My fans is kind of like, whatever. It's deeper than the actual game. Now, I want to talk about baseball real quick. I'm a big baseball fan too, because it's like I feel like with Black people, it's like I only know like 4 Black people who love baseball as much as I do. I'm a diehard White Sox fan. You talk about the Nationals winning the World Series. They won the World Series on my 17th birthday, so that was the greatest birthday gift ever. We just had the Tim Anderson, Josh Donaldson thing that's been going on. With these different players in the league. The White Sox only have 2 Black players, Tim Anderson and Josh Harrison. What's your opinion or your thought on what the state of Black baseball is right now? How things can get any better than what they are?
I think the state of Black baseball is a lot better than people understand, but at the same time, what that state is different than what they think it is. I think folks look back and they think about Ken Griffey Jr., they think about Frank Thomas, they think about Barry Bonds, and they say to themselves, where are all the superstars? Where are all those guys? And the truth is that the issue with Black baseball is not at the highest level. It's in the middle. And there was a time in baseball where those guys 20 through 25 on a roster, beyond just the big superstars or even the starters, you just had more brothers. I mean, in 1981, which is the year I was born, the percentage of Black Americans in the league was 18.1, which is the highest it's ever been. And that's not that much. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like there was a time when there were all sorts of
like 40% or something.
Yeah, no, that's not real. It was just that the dudes who played in the league weren't all superstars. They were just good players. And the idea of an average everyday player being Black went away over the course of the years because of the way salary structures were done and the way the CBA was all done, basically. And this is my opinion. A certain social level of scouting sort of took over. And it's like, oh, well, we never really got the benefit of the doubt unless we were a big time prospect or had otherwise proven ourselves. And so you look at the college game now, the NCAA tournament starting recently, there's a lot of brothers out there. There's probably a brother on every team in the tournament, for the most part, which is, I'd say, pretty big accomplishment over the last 10 years. And so for me, people think all the time about where are the stars. I think it's a participation thing because that's got to filter up. You know what I mean? Like, I think about a player like Bill Hall. Bill Hall played in the league for 10 years. He played all 9 positions on the field. He had pop, and nobody knows who he is. You know what I'm saying? But the guy played for 11 seasons. You know what I mean? Those are the kind of players I think about when people talk about black baseball. Josh Harrison is a great example of that. They're a perfect example of a veteran and a star, one of which represents something that I think people think black baseball is, whereas Josh Harrison probably more actually indicative of what the black baseball struggle is.
Right, exactly.
Because his talent wasn't off the charts to the point that people just, made sure that he was at the top flight at all times.
Yeah, and that's what I like about TA too, because it's like he was a basketball player. Like, and I think that now you talking about how you play multiple sports. TA played multiple sports. He just happened to be good at it. My favorite quote of his, we said baseball is boring. And I'm glad he put that out there. A lot of people feel that way. I always say baseball is an acquired taste, but with baseball, at least for me, it was because I saw Frank Thomas. It was seeing somebody who looked like you. And the first White Sox game I ever went to was like in 1997. It was Frank. It was Ray Durham, Jose Valentin, like all those guys. And I got the autograph signed Mitt, all that. And so that's kind of like I fell in love with the game right there. So I love what the TAs are doing. And even if you got guys who aren't superstar, I feel like just more of them, if kids can see them, that I feel like it can help a little bit more.
But it's not just the Frank Thomas is what I'm saying. I mean, Frank Thomas played with Tim Raines. He played with Ellis
Tim
Burks.
Raines,
He played with Lance Johnson. You know what I'm saying? Like, these kind of guys, people forget about those dudes.
I remember one dog, Lance Johnson,
I have a whole wall full of just regular black dude baseball cards at my house. You know what I'm saying? That I keep just to remind myself that, these dudes were around and they still are around. And that's one of the things that I kind of love about baseball is that there's so many guys that are like, oh, yeah. Remember that dude? You're like, yes, that guy was a big leaguer. He wasn't just some brother off the street. You know what I mean?
Ray Durham.
Ray Durham is a great example.
My guy.
Exactly.
Yeah, Ray Durham.
Exactly.
I know you got to get out of here, man. So I'm just going to ask you this one last thing. I know you've been since ESPN since 2016. What do you like the most about working at the Worldwide Leader and what they allow you to do over there and all the stuff that you've been doing up there?
I think the best part about it is that it's popular. There's no way around it. And I don't mean that for me. I mean that in terms of what it is that the message I'm trying to kick. I'm a brother from DC. My whole family's black. Everybody in my neighborhood was black. I know a lot of people from a lot of different places, but people forget all the time. If you're from where I'm from when I was born, there ain't a whole lot of people that are from where I'm from in the world that are on this platform. And so my perspective alone is something I'm representing for a lot more people than just me. And what ESPN provides, frankly, is a megaphone to be able to speak to America. I go through airports. I go everywhere I go in America. Somebody says, hey, brother, appreciate your work. And that means the world to me because it means that you're connecting to something. It ain't about whether or not I was right about whether or not somebody was going to win one particular game in a series. It's about the fact that little boys and girls out there see that we can do this if we have the talent and if we are diligent enough. I didn't cut my hair the entire first year I was on Around the Horn for this exact reason. People are like, oh, you out there looking crazy. I'm like, I'm not afraid of my hair. You know what I'm saying? And you shouldn't be either. And I did that for that exact reason. If I'm going to be on the biggest stage, I'm going to be my realest self. And that's what we got.
That's perfect, man. I really like that explanation. I need to get better at the being right thing because shout out my man Waz from the Ringer. We always joke with each other and say, I like being right a lot. So,
it's fun if you can get it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And when you study the game long enough, after a while, it doesn't become that difficult because you've been looking at it.
Definitely, man. Let them know where they can get in tune with you, man. Where they can follow you, where they can listen to you, all your content, read your stuff. Tell them where
pretty much everything is at Clinton Yates. IG, social. I'm not on TikTok yet because I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah,
but first name, last name. Follow me on the socials, and your boy's there. So.
Definitely, man. Thank you for joining us, man. This has been episode 1 of I'm Not Gonna Hold You, the off season. We gonna holler at y'all next week with episode 2.
Triple double hat trick, I know the code too. Ice trade, go for trade, yeah we cold too. Getting paper on these player haters, old news. Money on the other line, so I'm not gonna hold you. Money on the other line, so I'm not gonna hold you.